Welcome back to another episode of Life Ambition Podcast. Today we are joined by someone who works for a global grocery brand. He's going to give his input on working in photography and design. Without further ado, Greg Gillis. So Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome. Glad to hear. I'm very excited for this conversation today because I've had numerous of friends that are in, I guess you could say, the creative space, whether that's photography or videography, or even just trying to come up with different marketing aspects. And I think your perspective is really cool because you have worked with large global brands. And I just kind of want to know, where does creativity stem for you? Has it always been a thing? Is it something that you acquired as you kind of grew up where you're like, oh, I think about certain things differently? Where did it kind of all begin?
Wow. I think I absolutely think it's something you're born with, right? I don't think that all of a sudden you read a book one day and you become creative. I equate creativity with curiosity. I think they're synonymous, right? So I've always been a very curious person, how things work. I love to tear things apart and probably not put them back together the right way. But it's just that process of dissecting things and kind of see how they fit, within the environment. I mean, that's something I've always been attracted to.
Yeah, and I guess when you say curiosity, do you look around at, I guess, the world around you and say, oh, I like how they designed this aspect? Or what do you mean by creativity with curiosity?
When I see something that affects me emotionally, visually, I look at what is in front of me. I'm like, wow, why didn't I think of that? I'm curious as to how that person came up with that idea. And then I give it the credit of really pulling it off and some, being something that's very, very beautiful and something that, I would like to aspire to. I mean, that's the problem. It's like, I want to be everything, right? My curiosity, I want to do everything. And sometimes, in life, that's really hard to stay focused, on that.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. The aspect of wanting to do everything at once instead of taking like one task at a time, I find to be incredibly challenging just because there is so much out there. And especially when you get caught in your passion, you're like, oh, let me do this, this, and this, and this, and this. But if you start at one thing at a time, I find that it goes much longer than that. And I guess, did you go to school for, I guess, your creative side? Like, what did you go to school for? Where did you go to school? Let's kind of dive deep into that.
So, yeah, I've always, once again, my whole family is very artistic. I mean, pretty much everyone in my family can draw really well. And I'm probably the least talented drawer in my family, possibly, but I could do it to a certain extent. But, I took a lot of almost everyone, has a great story of a teacher and a mentor, and mine was in high school. One of my teachers that really helped, gave me a lot of guidance as to, what to study in college. And he directed me towards Southern Illinois University because there's a couple of really famous professors down there that were photographers. And, I think I'm creative, but I'm also really pragmatic, right? So like, I knew making a living drawing or painting was probably not going to pay the bills. I saw a wider opportunity in photography. And at that point, it was a little bit easier, and I enjoyed it. It's a process oriented, vocation. So I was really attracted to that. So so I went down to Southern Illinois University. I got a couple degrees. I got a degree in photography and I got a degree in film. Both I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts and a Bachelor of Science in both those. And then
Wow,
that was the beginning.
yeah, and you talk about filmmaking and photography itself. What would you say are like the biggest aspects of each? Because I've spoken to a few photographers. One that was on the show, his name was Zach Selway. He talked a lot about how it's very creative and how you're establishing a shot, but it's also a blend of colors at the same time. What would you say are probably some of the biggest points that you learned in school, but also learned in the workforce when it came to photography itself?
I think probably every person who's gone to college and gone into the workforce experiences the same thing. What they teach you in college and what real life is completely different, right? So when I was at Southern, there was a definite split in the students, and it was the commercial photography students and it was the fine art students, and we were always, like kind of butting heads.
Can you describe each of those actually real quick?
So
Because I'm unfamiliar.
if you got a degree in photography, you could say like, listen, all I want to do is show my work in galleries and sell prints. Like, I'm not interested in taking pictures of Big Macs from McDonald's. That's not what I do. On the other side, you can say, I want to make a lot of money. And back in the 80s, you can make a really decent living doing commercial photography, where you might have a passion of doing your fine art stuff on the side, but once again, that you have to pay for the studio rental and your equipment and all that sort of thing. So I went the route of commercial. That's kind of how I did it.
Gotcha. And I guess, where did the commercial route lead you? Because to just go back to it, is like, what did you learn in the career force that was so different than the school? And where would you say is a good blend for people to understand both?
I think what I learned is if you're going into, and I'm just going to say commercial photography, you really don't get to use a ton of your own creativity, especially now. Back in the 80s, you could a little bit more but now with digital and with the internet, your shot is already planned out. It's already lit because people do mood boards of the lighting that they want, of exactly how they want it to look. So they're coming to you just to execute it. So, you have to really know your tools, but unless you're the top 0.1% of photographers, you're just recreating what they're bringing to you. So you don't have a ton of creative input into it. And some people are good with it and some people aren't,
And is that just because teams are larger? Because it sounds like you're very much involved in the marketing aspect of different global brands. Is that just because the team working for that marketing, like that marketing group within the agency, is just so big that they all have that kind of input? Or is it just because,
No,
hey,
it's once again, it's the advent of the internet. It's the so much source document and inspiration shots that are out there, that's easy to pull together. These mood boards and creative direction. I also think that the liability is much higher now than it was back in the day, right? So, if you're promising a client the shot's going to look like this, it better look like that, because they've signed off. So many teams have signed off on that shot turning out to be a certain way. So they certainly don't want a surprise at the end of the day. And I think that's why digital has really taken off so much in photography, is instantly where you're going to get, right? Back in the day, you would shoot film and bring it to the lab and not sleep that night and go pick it up the next morning and make sure that all your exposures were right or it was in focus. You didn't know until the next day, right?
Really?
But now it's so instant gratification that you see it right in front of you.
So what do you mean by digital photography versus where you were running the film and then checking out, see the next day if you got the shot?
Yeah, I mean, so back in probably 1998, that's when everything really changed from analog to digital. And it started off as just small little chips on the back of cameras, and that were ungodly expensive. So there's a little bit of area in there that people were shooting both. They might shoot film just to cover their butt to make sure it was working, but some clients actually came in just requesting digital photography, and that really changed everything. I mean, we had to retool, we had to relearn. We had to learn new processes, processes that were changing daily. Consider the advent of AI. AI 6 weeks ago is different than it is now, right? So you have to stay on top, and you have to invest that time and the money and the energy. All I know is that my contemporaries who thought digital photography was just a passing fad and it would never replace film were selling real estate a year later, right? Because they couldn't stay in the business. And I think that that's one of the great things that I think my industry has taught me is that you have to be open to change. You have to be open to progress, because if you just dig your heels in the sand and say, nah, I'm just going to do it the way I do it, you're going to be a dinosaur quick.
And where do you kind of see the digital photography realm going? You mentioned AI aspects. Can be like this thing of AI imaging when it comes to branding deals?
I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball, just knowing where it's heading, but it is at such an astronomical pace right now. It's going to replace probably more video people than still people for right now. But I think 80% of film production will be AI in the next 2 years.
80%?
I'm thinking, yeah.
Holy cow.
You don't have to pay actors. You don't have to pay residuals. You don't have to pay screenwriters. I was listening to, one of my favorite people in the world to listen to is a guy named Scott Galloway. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I have not heard of him.
He's a professor at I think New York University, and he also writes for the New York Times. Probably the most brilliant person I ever listened to in podcasts, and I highly encourage it. He has a podcast called Pivot and another one called Raging Moderates. The incredible guy, but he was saying, think about this with AI. They have enough source stuff. Let's pick Happy Days, right? They have enough episodes of Happy Days. They could feed Happy Days into an AI generator. That they can now make another 10 years of Happy Days episodes through AI.
10 years?
Yeah. I mean, it could go on forever, right? Because it just learns it. It learns what the people look like. It learns their mannerisms. It learns their storylines. It learns the tempo and the pace. I mean, think about that. And the people that are going to suffer are all those people that they hire, that Netflix would hire to be to do lighting on a set, or be an extra in a movie, or even the people doing the craft service, for the lunches. They're all not going to be needed anymore.
I have seen things, and I don't know if Netflix did this or not, but it might have been just honestly a video that I saw, but they created an entire movie just using AI, and it was all characters with different voice lines, and it ran totally smoothly all throughout. And I could 100% see that's where movie making can go, because the special visual effects and all that stuff can just be cranked up in AI.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's, once again, the liability is so low. If you don't like something that it generates, you just regenerate another image. Back in the day when I was shooting film, each roll of film costs a certain amount of dollars. Each Polaroid that I would pull costs a certain amount of dollars. I think the thing with digital that has really catapulted it is, one, you don't have that financial liability anymore, and two, you can be so prolific, right? So there's a term called spray and pray. So you can just shoot, and you might take 1,000 frames, but there might be that one frame in there that's absolutely perfect. When you had film, you had a budget to stay to. Like, I couldn't take 1,000 frames. Like, they're saying, okay, you can shoot 4 rolls of film and that's it, and you better get it within that. So,
and how hard is it to find that one perfect picture? Because I'm be honest, I am terrible when it comes to art. I don't know anything about it, how to be creative at all. I can barely draw a stick figure correctly if it came to it. But how do you find that?
Question, because before, once again, like pre-digital, you took a shot, not much post-production was done to it. Today, you do a shot and you might be only 20% there, right? Because you're going to say, okay, in a lot of stuff that we do here at Aldi, it's like, okay, I'm going to take a picture of a bag of groceries in the studio, but then I'm going to then take that bag of groceries and AI it into a beautiful sunlit kitchen with streaming light coming in through the windows.
Wait, you can do that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Holy cow. So
it's
like you
incredible.
just take a picture at the grocery store of just a bag or something and then make it all fancy in the
Yep.
after production?
Yeah, and
Holy cow.
it's all about the prompting. So, once again, we'll take a bag of groceries in the studio or something. Let's say a toaster, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to drop this toaster that we just photographed into um, a Southwest style kitchen with, you know, I don't know, checkered curtains and golden light coming in through the window, and having a steaming cup of coffee right next to it, and it spits it out and it gives you several different options.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that would you would have to go on location, find a location, spend the money for the location, the crew, shoot out. Right now, you're doing this as you're having a cup of coffee. You're just writing prompts in.
And in my head, I can still see a lot of the creative side take place because you're AI producing the images. So you have to think about it and how the lighting hits different objects.
Mhm.
Because if it doesn't look right, then it doesn't look right.
Right.
But I also can see where you're losing a lot of the workforce to it because there's not that need for all the setup. And I
Yep.
guess before the AI generated images and like digital, you had your roll of film and you're taking a photo. Let's say you don't get the perfect shot within those 4 rolls of film. What's going on? Like, do you have to redo it,
Yeah.
or what do you need to do? Do you need to bring everyone back? Because I can't assume everyone's just living there.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it happens, and it's happened to me. You know, here's an example. So I used to shoot a lot. You know what a 4x5 camera is? That's like the camera where you put the big hood over your head and
Oh yeah, yeah,
big old
yeah.
camera, and you put
That was
film in
like
the back
school
of the
pictures.
camera. Yeah, well, not school pictures, but like back in the day, back in the early 1900s. But we still use that in commercial photography. And so at the end of a big shoot one day, I mean, it was a huge shoot where we had models, I rented a studio, blah blah blah.
Mm.
Um, I told the assistant to take the film that we shot, go load it up into the film box so we could drop it off to the lab. He went in the dark room and he put all the film in the box, and he forgot to put the lid on the box and turn the light on, and ruined
Oh,
everything we shot that day.
oh man.
So I had to tell the client that unfortunately we're going to have to do this all over again tomorrow, and that was all on my dime. I had to pay for everything.
Wow.
So yeah. So once again, with digital, that something like that happening. I mean, the worst that can happen is your hard drive crashes out, but usually you'd have redundancies in when you're shooting, so you don't lose the files. But yeah, that happens.
I just can't even imagine that kind of conversation in my
Yeah, oh
head.
yeah, it's not
That's
easy.
yeah. Oh, and I guess working with Aldi as a global brand, what is that experience like? Do you have those kind of communications with upper management? Say, hey, this is the shot, or upper management's like, this is the shot we love to do and promote on Aldi's website or marketing on like commercials. Or kind of what does that process look like?
So at least here at Aldi, we still have an agency of record that we use for some of the bigger things. I was brought in here a little over 4 years ago to develop the studio. That's basically I've spent my entire career developing creative studios. I mean, I started off as just a commercial shooter, but once digital came around, I had to pivot, and I really um, put a lot of time into going to different corporations and building creative studios that include retouching, imaging, video, and photography. So that's why I was brought in here to Aldi. So we didn't have the infrastructure here in Batavia to do that, and I'm slowly building that process out. So we still do
Hmm.
have an agency of record that does a lot of our larger shoots. Um, a lot of the stuff that we shoot here is the hardcore product stuff that you see in the ads and you see online. But the bigger presence of what we're doing is all social media. So organic and paid, that's taken up a lot. That's replacing a lot of, let's say, the traditional advertising that you would see, and that's happening with most corporations.
Gotcha. And this is where I think a lot of the marketing aspect comes in. Like, do you ever wish you kind of went back to school for like a marketing major or something like that, just
No,
because it's easy
no,
to understand this kind of stuff? Or you just kind of
no.
like, I know this. Like, I take the photo. This is what I wanted to get. I know it's going to market in this certain way because of X, Y, Z.
No, the marketing part of it to me is too granular. It's um it's having to check too many boxes. Like I love something that is spontaneous and organic, and hopefully I still am able to produce some of that in my work. It a lot of the marketing stuff, and I'm not talking about Aldi per se, but um, you're answering to so many people, and that one image has to appeal to everyone. And one of the great things about Aldi, I feel, is like they take a lot of risks with their imagery. It's very creative. Their copywriting is second to none.
What do you mean by risk?
That they're putting this time and effort and money into an image that might not sell to into the general public.
Gotcha.
They're taking a risk that out of 100 people, 20 might get the joke. The other 80% might go, what the hell is this? And I think that's what makes them special.
And how do you judge? Because a lot of this sounds like perspective. What's your perspective on this image? Because it may be perfect to one person, but maybe not necessarily another. How do you judge that aspect? And also with perspective, you said there's an 80-20 with sometimes if something lands. Like, how do you try and encapsulate as much audience as you can?
It's a great question. I mean, you're not going to please everyone, right? So I don't try to. I have what I believe is a certain built-in DNA of what I will allow out there in the wild. I mean, like I'm not going to release something that I shot that I don't feel good about, technically and aesthetically. So I kind of have those standards, but I've also, you have so many tools today that you can end up just over massaging something that at the end of the day, it's not anything like you imagined in your head to begin with. And sometimes I found that first iteration in your head, the first 5 seconds of thinking of something, usually is probably the best. Just because you can manipulate an image doesn't mean you have to. Just because you can fix it in post doesn't mean you should. You should do it when you should be true. I feel true to my craft, and
Yeah.
I'm not relying on technology to improve my compositional skills or my lighting skills. I still think you need that basic knowledge.
Yeah, I guess like technology can only do so much, and especially for you, it's got to still feel real. And I do wonder if that is the perspective that a lot of people are trying to see now. Does it seem real? Like, oh, I know there's obviously an aspect where it has to show that it's the best of all, where you said that golden sunshine's coming through the window and it's looking all nice. But I do think people nowadays are looking for something that's real to them and that they can relate to, because you can AI generate anything you want now at this point.
No, and that's a huge thing right now in marketing is authenticity. Is it authentic? And is your brand tone authentic? Is your messaging authentic? Or are you just trying to go for a catchphrase? Or are you just trying to get the biggest bang for your buck? And I think that changes with whichever generation you're a part of, right? So I know, right now in marketing, the authenticity and the experiential is really high up on people's lists. And maybe that wasn't so much when I was younger, but you still need to adapt to it at what your market is asking for.
And what would you say characterizes I would say, your perspective on how you like things? I know you said you still like things to be authentic, but how would you even characterize just other people that are on the same level as you? Are they the same way? Does everyone kind of think the same, and then it changes kind of like you said as the generations go of what they are looking for?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I have one of the photographers I hired here to work with me. He's probably 3 years older than I am. We've worked together for the last 20 years doing some freelance stuff. And when we're probably the last generation, and we'll take to our grave some of the um, some of the techniques that the newest generation will never know how to do or what it even means. You know, um,
Could you give me an example of like what you mean?
Shooting with a 4x5 camera, figuring out your exposure without a meter or without a monitor. There's ways, figuring out, how to focus a camera with a ruler and not just looking on your screen. I mean,
Wait,
those
a
are all,
ruler? Really? Like,
yeah,
do you just kind of like
it's,
hold it out?
it's a mathematical formula.
Oh,
Yeah. And figuring out, if I put a gel on this light, how much more light am I going to need? How many more stops? Without having a monitor or a Polaroid in front of you, you have to figure out your
yeah.
what
How
you
did you figure those techniques out? Because I've never heard of someone putting gel on like a lighting piece to see how much more light you get. I've never heard of that before.
Oh yeah. I mean, back in the day when you go in and shoot under fluorescent lights, you'd have to either gel the light or gel the camera because the spectrum of the light would be different. Now, everything can be set on automatic on your digital camera, and it corrects for the color distortion. But back in when shoot
Holy
film,
cow.
it wouldn't do that. So you had to know your whole color spectrum. What's the opposite of magenta? It's
Gosh, I
green.
don't even know. Yeah, green.
I mean,
I was
so
gonna say blue.
you have to think in terms of RGB, red, green, blue, or CMYK, cyan, magenta, and black.
So
It's
that's where the mathematical stuff that you're talking about comes into
very
play.
technical, yeah. And now everything is either taken care of in post or taken care of in camera.
Huh.
So it's a good and bad thing. Once again, as I said earlier, it allows a photographer to be more creative. Once they can shoot a lot more pictures. One, they know they can correct in post. Two, there's no liability of cost of the film. They can just be as prolific as they need to. But two, once again, a lot of that information is going to be lost.
Yeah, and outside of moving everything in-house to Aldi, what
Mm-hmm.
was probably one of the coolest projects that you've been a part of that required a lot of that creativity aspect to yourself? And how do you approach situations like that? I know you said you're told to be, uh, you're asked to do certain things with the image, but how do you even approach situations like that of, I want to do this, we're going to bring in this lighting, go here? Like, what's kind of the breakdown process in your head?
Well, so we have to pretty much follow a brand book, and that just dictates lighting, tone, colors, values, and our brand book is based on a simple thing. We're a maverick on a mission, and so whenever we're approaching photography, you always kind of keep that in mind. Like what kind of lighting can I do that's really going to be bold and it's really going to be strong. Um, the thing that really gets me up every morning and out here is they've given me so much latitude to create what I want to create. And the fact that we're now incorporating retouching an AI into what we're shooting, what we're imaging, it just opens up a huge world that you can be so creative with it and you can be smart about it. I I don't know if I said this before. Like I feel like part of my personality is I'm equal left brained and right brained. So the thing about photography and film is every shoot that you do is a problem that needs to be solved. So I go through the whole process of a shoot before I even touch a camera, before I even, you know, set up a background or a light. I go
Yeah.
through every single step in my head. How am I going to do this? How am I going to approach this? What am I going to need? What problems might arise? And do I have enough equipment to take care of that if something goes south? And to me, that was like a really attractive thing about my business, my industry, is it allowed me to be a problem solver
Yeah.
and still be creative. So it's like it's I think it's a unique situation that I don't see a lot of professions that have that ability to do that.
And I think that's great for people starting out to hear about too, that it, if you can think about the problem beforehand, it'll help you out a lot more in the long run. Because what if you pick up the camera and you didn't think about the different problems that may arise? Like, I don't know what those problems would be in a studio, but what if that does occur? And then you're wasting company dollar, or if you're a freelance worker, you're getting into that realm as well of, oh, then you're wasting precious time on people.
And most of the time you have a client, I mean, because we have an in-house studio, my clients are the different pillars of the pillars and the channels around Aldi here. So, for the media team, we'll be shooting for them. For the social team, we'll be shooting for them. For the corporate team, we might have to do something for them. So those are all basically clients. So even though we're all in-house, you still have to be ready to perform. And that's it. It's tiring. It takes a lot out of you,
Oh, I'm sure. Because how long would you say is the planning process when you're dealing with this huge organization? Like, I know you said you break down the pillars of the social media team. How long does it take for you to plan out the specific plan or shot that you guys want to take? And then how long would you say is the actual shot itself?
So it's interesting. We always say the shot itself was only about 1/25th of a second for the one shot.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's all the stuff that you do in pre-production and post-production. So that typically from concepting to retouching and getting it back is usually about 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So they'll be concepting, presenting the concept to the different channel teams, having them sign off on it, putting together inspiration boards, kind of knowing what we're going to need as far as either talent or backgrounds, stuff like that, setting up a pre-light, the day of the shoot, going over post-production, going over retouching notes, and either we do the retouching here in-house or we send it, we offshore it overseas to get done. And then full circle, come back and putting it up onto the brand portal that the different marketing channels can use those images for whatever.
Yeah, and I guess that's still even a short amount of time for me, 4 days. I feel like it's just in my head. But I wanted people to understand that it takes a lot more than just what they see on Instagram or anything like that is what you said, like 1/25th of a second versus all the other process that goes into it. And if you love being a problem solver, and structuring shots the way you want and the creativity side, then I think this is perfect for people.
Yeah, as great as digital is, the misnomer that a lot of clients that I've had is that it's easier, that it's faster. That might be true for some things, but there's some rules in life, in optics, that don't change. You still have to know how to focus the camera. You still have to know how to light it. You still have to. Those things will never change. You still have that ability to do that. And I see so many young people coming into the industry, not ever changing any settings on the camera. They just leave everything on automatic. And I'm like, if you do this, if you change this setting, you'll get this look, which is completely different than if you do this.
So how do you talk to people coming into the industry of just practicing? Just where do you recommend going? When you were first starting to learn the photography business itself, where did you go to learn these different steps? Were you just kind of sitting in your room with your camera trying to figure out all the settings? What does this mean? Because I find that, like you said, maybe some people just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a different time, but back in the day, my parents were really open with letting me do whatever I wanted to do. So, when I first got my license, I grew up in Palatine. I would take this big old Buick station wagon and drive to downtown Chicago as a 16-year-old and just take pictures. I mean, I would never allow, my kids to do that now.
Yeah.
That's what I
I
did.
was about to say.
Yeah. Um, you have nothing, is better than just repetitive acts. You have to do it over and over, that it just becomes just burned into your head of, this is how I need to shoot this. So, and the only way you do that is keep dripping the shutter,
Yeah.
and once again, with digital, there's no excuses why you shouldn't be taking thousands of pictures a week.
Yeah, because the people obviously I talk to about photography are very much in the hockey industry, but the lighting of hockey, they said, is always funny because you're playing with white spaces on the ice, but then the environment around it is all dark with the stands and all that stuff. So it can be very different. But they said they would just kind of go out to a city, maybe not necessarily Chicago, but and just go around just taking photos of different graffiti art and playing around with that, seeing how they like it, and taking thousands of images. And that's how they became good. And do you think with digital photography and AI coming out, that's just what everyone should be doing? Like, just try and practice as much as you can, see if you like it?
Yeah. 100%. The problem with how life is structured now is, you go to high school, you're told to get a college diploma, you go spend $100,000 on college, you come out, the first job you get is in your industry, and you find out you don't like it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, why did I spend all that time and money and emotional stress on something I'm not going to use?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I suggest, before you start trying to figure out what you want to do in life, you really have to start doing it before you commit to something that you can't get away from.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of doing this, having this conversation, is for people to understand that aspect. Because I was 18 years old. I had no idea what I wanted to do going to school, but I was in school, and I was very fortunate that my parents and friends and their parents just got me in touch with the right people to understand, like, yeah, GIS is something that you want to do. And it was very new at the time. So I did some research on it. And I was like, yep, this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. And went from there. But I have friends now that are wanting to change what they do after a year of their career.
Yep.
And I was like, well, that's all that schooling just kind of down the drain. And now it's time to start from scratch, or they're just kind of pivoting into a new role. But that's why I like having these conversations, because it's exposing to people what is out there, where's the field going, because there is that element that's missed in schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish that there was a society and companies now would offer internships to people that have no prior knowledge of the industry.
Yeah.
Right? So it exposes them to what it is in the real world before they go through 4 years of college and then decide it. Because at that point, it's 4 years are gone and all that money's gone. It's a way to if they're more mentoring and shadowing of people before they decide on their, everyone takes 6 months off. Why do you have to jump into college right after high school? Take 6 months off and try to explore different industries. Go to the people in your neighborhood that work in different industries and say, hey, can I hang out with you for a week?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I guarantee the amount of people that do not do the same thing and just like your cul-de-sac, your neighborhood alone, is way more than you think. And 100%, like, if you have no idea what you want to do going to school, and that's what I hope to instill in my kids one day, is just, if you have no idea, go work, just take some time off to kind of figure it out, because you don't want to regret your decision later on and have like a crisis of what the heck am I doing one day when you wake up.
Yeah. I mentioned this guy, Scott Galloway, before, and he has this great quote in one of his podcasts, and he says, challenge the conventional wisdom of pursuing passions, arguing that the less glamorous industry is the greater potential for success. meaning, if you want to be successful and make a lot of money, you might want to not think about going into photography or going into drama or theater. The least sexy of an industry, the more potential you're going to have to make a lot of money. And I look at people that they frown upon, trade schools. I'm sorry, a lot of those tradesmen are making a lot more money than a lot of people that have, advanced degrees.
It's true. It's very true.
And I see with the advent of AI and the displacement of a lot of those workers, AI is not going to put a toilet in your house. AI is not going to change your HVAC and put a new air conditioner. AI is not going to run a new circuit for a ceiling fan. And so you're going to be able to command really good money for that.
Yeah, I was at a engagement party not too long ago, and there's an electrician that worked there, and he talked about how the industry, he went to trade school, became an electrician, and after like a few years, he said, you kind of know everything, so you can start your own business. You make money even working under someone, but as soon as you start your own business, then boom, you're kind of exploding because there's always going to be a rewiring in your house. There's always going to be some transformer that's out there that needs to be worked on. And even like welders. Welding, super cool. I don't understand how people do it because I just think when you put two things together, it would just kind of collapse. But welding, people make extremely good money doing that.
Yeah. I hear you. I kind of wish I had some of that guidance, back when I was younger. I probably would, we talk about this all the time, that, what would you do different? I probably would have become an electrician.
Yeah, you would have?
Yeah, I would have. I love, my dad was an electrical engineer, and he taught me a lot about electricity. And when I got out of college, I rehabbed 7 different studios and 2 different houses, and I did all the electric myself.
Wow.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about when people are thinking about their careers is you're thinking about your vocation and your avocation, right? So it's a blessing when they can be the same, that what you do for money is also your passion in life.
Yeah.
But don't be so blinded that you think what I do for a living has to be what I like to do for a hobby or what I'm really in love with. You might be really good at something, but not love it. And I think you need to be okay with it. The interesting thing with me about wanting to be an electrician is I made my whole career on subjectivity. So meaning what I produce from my mind is subjective. You might like it. The person next to you might hate it. With electricity, it's either right or it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's binary. It's either 0 or it's a 1. And if it's wrong, right away because it trips a breaker, you get sparked. So it's kind of completely different from what I do. Mm-hmm. And having a career that totally relies on subjectivity and critiques, it's hard. It's draining.
And that's where you truly have to love what you do, because you said there's may not be too much money involved in it, but if you're invested in it and you're wanting to kind of make a difference in a sense of a brand or just changing perspective and, like you said, subjectivity, then 100% this is what you can do.
Yeah.
Because my Mark Lichtenstein, he was actually the first episode. He talked about when you work for the government, because he's the Forest Budget Director, or the U.S. Forest Service Budget Director. And he talked a lot about how you don't necessarily go into it for money. You do it to make a change. And it may not be short term. It's definitely long-term goals that you're thinking about. But, I could even see for yourself that you have short-term goals, and when you're making a difference for a brand or company, especially if they're getting more revenue, you're getting more interaction with customers, then 100% that could be a really good feeling.
Yeah, it's a good feeling, but you also have to pay the Netflix bill and the cell phone bill at the end of the month.
That's true. That's
you
true.
know. Yeah, so I think you have to do a deep dive and level set with yourself. What do I want to get out of this? I've always had a 5-year plan, Drew, where like in 5 years from now, where do I want to be and how do I get to there?
Yeah.
Anything past that 5 years, I have no control over. I do feel like I can control 5 years in front of me, and so that's what I really encourage everyone to do is to make that plan. And if you're okay not making money for a couple of years, but you're learning a craft, great. You
Yeah.
know, but I think with society changing, with AI, I mean, you just really have to be willing to question a lot of things that you wouldn't question before. You know, I copied down. There's 10 things that struck me about one of the podcasts from Scott Gallen. He was talking about careers, and I thought it would be applicable for this. And
Yeah.
so, for success, he listed out 10 things, and I'm just going to read them to you because I thought they were brilliant. 1 is get certified. 2, be remarkable. 3, find the variance. 4, get to a city. 5, and I love this one, boring is sexy. 6, this one's a hard one, be willing to delay gratification. And I know that's hard, but I think that's real important. 7, demonstrate strength and grit. 8, don't follow your passion. 9, ignore the myth of balance. And 10, fight unfair. And I just thought that was a brilliant list of things that can kind of help people shape 5 years down the road where they want to be.
Yeah. And I think 6 and 7 really tie well together because you may do something that you like, but you get no gratuity or revenue based out of it. And that can be extremely hard, but you have to show grit.
Yep.
You have to. And once you keep persevering, eventually, if you keep persevering and trying to master that craft, eventually something good's going to come out of it. That's just what I believe. And, we're 30 plus episodes doing this show. I just do it for fun, but I 100% believe there could be something that comes out of it. And if it helps one person find a career path that they enjoy, then that's going to be it.
Yeah, it's like being a waiter, right? So you wait a table, you do a great job, you've been doing this for years, and somebody gives you a shitty tip. You don't stop being a waiter.
No.
Because the next table that you wait on might be somebody that really, thought you were a great person and hands you their business cards and give me a call, if you want a job.
Yeah, exactly.
You just never know.
Also, being a waiter, that's to deal with people. That's a skill. I gotta say,
Yeah.
I was a busboy. I've had my fair share of people. I'm like, oh my goodness.
That's boot camp, right?
Yeah, it is boot camp, 100%. But if you want to know relation skills, 100% go into the restaurant business of becoming a waiter or like a busboy or just anyone that can firsthand deal with customers, because that is where it's all at.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Hey, well, Greg, I really do appreciate you being on the show today. I think it was an awesome conversation, and I can't thank you enough.
Great. It was great talking to you.
Hey, everyone. Want to take a quick second and say thank you to whoever listened to the episode today. I really do appreciate it, and it means a lot. If you did like the episode, make sure to give it a like or 5-star rating, depending on what platform you are listening to. And if you really want to support the show, check out our website or Patreon link below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next episode.